let's kind of go into the beer because I'm excited about this draft in general. So let's go into the beer, or in your case, the alcohol we're drinking tonight. AG, what are you sipping on tonight?
Yeah, so I've I used to be a big beer drinker, and I still enjoy a beer every once in a while. But maybe is like part of the theme of the jungle's back, and there's more creeps for everyone, so people are getting more gold. So I've gone top shelf today, and I've picked up some Highwest whiskey from your local Costco. I would imagine that nationally they all carry them, but at least the Costco's here in Washington State carry them.
Hmm.
And this one kind of is reminiscent of a home that I once had when I lived in Salt Lake City for a few years. So I'm sure for anyone who's from the Utah area knows about Park City, and this Highwest whiskey is from a distillery, Highwest, that exists in Park City, Utah. So I used to live really close to the distillery, and I was excited to see that they're carrying it at Costco now. And the specific drink that I'm drinking by them is their double rye, which is I think they're like their original, like their classic. So
Hmm.
it's pretty good. It's 46% by volume, so
Oh man,
it
nice.
hit me a little bit harder than the beer that I might have been drinking, but it's good. It's got a nice smoky taste to it.
Yeah, that'll get for interesting conversations. Exactly what we
Yeah,
want here.
exactly. Gotta loosen up a little bit.
Yep, gotta get those. Gotta get those. You gotta get thinking about it. You gotta be loose enough to be able to accept ideas and be brave
Dude,
enough to combat each other here. So,
you play super aggressively, and sometimes you and I butt heads when we play together because I'm more of a passive player. But put me on that spirit breaker, dude, and we'll be ready to go after this for sure. Just be like, charge that guy. I'll be all over it.
Sounds good, man. Sounds like a plan. All right, so I'm good. What I'm drinking is I'm drinking just regular Guinness Draught. Generally, I always go for something that's more local. I just at the store, I was like, I'm not really feeling a local beer. I just want to pick up something that's familiar and that I've been drinking pretty much for the past few years. And Guinness Drought's just that simple beer I go back to every once in a while. So,
Yeah,
just
dude.
keep it simple for tonight. Keep it good.
Let me ask you a question. It just if you'll let me go on a little bit of tangent
Oh yeah.
here. Have you I don't know what have you traveled outside the country before, Flubb?
I have never traveled outside of the country.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
So, if you're a fan of the U.S. Version of Guinness, someday you're gonna have to find yourself in. If you can settle for like the UK, that's fine. But ideally, if you can get over to Ireland and sample some of the Guinness that they serve there, I don't know if it's a timing thing where from when they fill the cask and send it out, or the kegs and send them out, or whatever, but I can promise you that the Guinness over in Ireland and over in the UK just tastes a million times better than the Guinness here. And I've tried it in multiple countries around the world, and it's like the closer you get to the UK, the better it tastes.
Yeah, I actually have a buddy of mine, an old buddy that lived around where I used to grow up. He's traveled like all over the world, and he always talks about the best places that he's ever drank are Germany, and
Hmm.
there's some pubs that he was at in the UK and in Ireland. He talks about generally the Europe scene for drinking, and there's some other places too in the like Southeast Asia, but he always goes back to Germany a lot of times and Ireland, and those are apparently the best beer places. So hopefully one day we can get famous enough to be able to get like sponsored by someone out there. That'd be awesome. But
Yeah.
that's for to wishing, Hopefully we can. Maybe if not, I'll put out a trip to go out there with a bunch of Dota buddies or something. Be a good
Yeah,
time.
for sure.
All right, so we're talking about beer to start us off. So we're going to be going into the actual draft here, and I'm going to just kind of let you do your talking here. I'm going to kind of let you present your draft. We're going to have you go into the picking order and bands. So just tell me everything about your draft, and then I'll try to pick it apart for you.
Yeah, so I had mentioned that my draft was going to be based off of sort of the new meta. And actually, when you had mentioned to me earlier this week about being on the show and coming up with a draft, I was a little bit nervous because the new patch had hit, and I felt like I understood 7.05 pretty well, and I play on an AD2L team now, and we had some really good drafts. I play offlaner for them, and been playing a lot of Magnus, a lot of Legion Commander, and I was wondering, like, how is the new meta going to affect sort of the lineup that we did and the types of drafts that we would run. But I think the draft I have for today is a pretty good one. So the theme is all about hitting a mid-game timing with my draft. And I can go ahead and go into the order. Do you want me to start with just the first two picks, first two bands? Or
I mean, however you want to describe the draft is fine.
Okay.
I personally just want to hear like your thought process of like maybe you're banning out these two heroes first to kind of counteract what you're going to be picking in the first phase, or however the basic idea, however you want to talk about it, whether you're going to mix them up or just do one at a time. Either way, however you feel.
Yeah, so I think actually one of the harder things about picking this draft in general was like trying to think about what would be banned first and what could I realistically get in a draft to start. And I do think what happens is when every time it's a week after the patch drops, people still ban or people still tend to pick a lot of the heroes that were really strong in the last patch, regardless of their nerfs, just because people are comfortable on those heroes. So I don't think I think actually the order that I could pick these heroes in and the types of bans I'd be putting out are pretty relevant to some of the new heroes that are big in the meta of 706 and some of the old heroes of 705 who might still get some priority when it comes to bans or picks. So my team is this. It is and I'll go in order of picking. First two picks I would drop on Kotl and Lina. I mentioned that the emphasis is on the mid game, but also I want to place an emphasis on winning lanes and having strong lanes. Because I do think in 706 that if you can get off to a really good start in the laning phase, and we talked about the shrines being on cooldown, so it's a little rough for mid laners, it is unbearable for off laners, let me tell you. So those lane dominating supports that can really like bolster your lineup are, in my opinion, of real high value. And I think Kotl is definitely a hero that can be pretty pesky to some of the offlaners that are being picked up. And also in the addition of a later pick that I'll have in my draft. So the next two picks after Kotl and Lina will be Ogre and Bristleback. And then to round out the draft, I would be fifth picking a lone Druid. So I'm actually not going to run a traditional setup. What I would do is I'd send Kotl and Bristle to the off lane. I'd have Ogre be my roaming support. I'd probably send him mid maybe to start, just to get the Lina off to a good start, depending on their mid matchup. Or I might send him to my safe lane to help the lone Druid out. Or I might send him into an aggro try. It's kind of gonna depend on what the other team's picking up. You know, like if it's a Shadow Fiend mid, then I'm gonna send him mid so that he can harass out for the first wave or two. But the concept here is that the Kotl is going to really help the Bristleback in lane with Chakra Magic and really help him to sort of spam out the wave, secure last hits, make it really uncomfortable and bearable for the safe laner. And then the lone Druid is a pretty strong hero in terms of being able to lane by himself. So that's why I'm sending him down into the safe lane on his own. And the Lina, I think there's a few heroes you could put into this position for mid, but I really just wanted a mid that I wouldn't have to, that could win most matchups and would hit a really good mid game peak, but then also had some room for some late game because this lone Druid that I'm picking is bear emphasis. So maybe one of the weak spots could be that we don't have great late game, but the Lina maybe gives me a little bit something in that regard. Also, I'm picking a Bristleback, so you know I'll stop talking about the weaknesses of the draft. I'm sure you'll pick them apart. So that's how I would pick.
Okay, nice. Is there anything else you want to kind of reveal about your draft real quick? Okay.
I'll discuss my bans because I think this is pretty critical here. So on the pro scene, Templar Assassin has been a pretty popular mid, both in the Kiev Major, and then I think she's still really popular for 706 because again she's able to farm jungle really well, which is pretty huge, and then she can be pretty dominant in the early to mid game in terms of like that 10 to 25 minute mark. She can really be scary if she has a good laning phase, so and can get some like jungle stacks. So I'm banning TA first, and then the next hero I'm going to ban is a Lifestealer. The Lifestealer. Also, I'll go back to the TA. It's just a kind of not a great matchup for Lina because Lina has a lot of like spell abilities, so I don't want her to have to deal with that shield that TA can put up and block some of the damage. So that's another reason why I don't want that lane, that hero in the lane. Lifestealer, just overall, he can pick up a Silver Edge potentially. Also, he's a hero that can come online pretty early, and do pretty well for himself, and he's not bad in laning phase. So um, again, the theme of my draft is win the lanes and then have a really good mid game push, focused around the bear. So I don't want to have to deal with a lifestealer who can sort of use the levels that he's gained, and some of the items that he's picked up to really be strong in that early game. The next two bans, and I'm kind of hoping the enemy team wouldn't pick this up, but the first one of the second phase ban would be Centaur. And the reason for this is that my team is going to be focused on going high ground and taking a Rax between roughly 25 and 30 minutes, somewhere in that mark. And the Centaur, to me, allows the team to really, like, his own team to press forward and disrupt any sort of high ground siege. So I don't want that hero in there. And he's not bad in like a 1v1 lane, although I'm not sure how he would fare necessarily against the lone druid, but get him out of here. And then Ursa, another hero that's kind of focused on the early game, early to mid game. Get him out of here. And then my fifth ban could go in a lot of directions. I kind of settled on Vengeful Spirit. The idea behind my drafts is when we go high ground, the Bristleback is going to be sort of just that big tanky target in the front line, sort of preventing the enemy team from busting through the ranks and getting to the backline supports or getting to like the Lina, some of the squishier heroes. And then also the bear is going to be up there, ideally with the radiance, and potentially the lone druid also might be in melee form. So I've got like two tanks plus the bear up there. I don't want the Venge to be able to swap one of them back into tier 4 range, so I'm going to ban out the Vengeful Spirit as well.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Sorry for me being quiet and did different things. So sorry, it makes a lot of sense. I
just wanted to put it all out there.
Yeah, you're good. There was a shower going on in the background, so if you heard that low humming for anyone who's listening in, sorry about that. It's something in my house that's generally it's really loud whenever someone takes a shower. So sorry about that, and that probably won't happen again. But honestly, I really like your draft, AG. There's a lot of different things that I found that were really great about it, and there's a lot of things that I think are not counterable, because there's a bunch of different things that I was starting out with your draft, and I was like, okay, if I first see Kotl Lina, I'm going to try to get that explosive damage. I want to try to get these guys that can just basically delete these squishy heroes, and then you answer with two tanks right after it, and your last hero is kind of a cross between a tank and a squishy, so you're really spreading yourself out thin so that you can't have a specific style of draft that's like, okay, minus armor destroys these guys, or magic destroys these guys, or pushing destroys these guys, because you have answers to each little general piece of the puzzle. Because one thing I first thought of whenever I was going versus your draft, I was like, okay, before I saw the Ogre Bristle, I would have planned to go PA versus you. I know Kotl kind of helps destroy her because he can lessen her mana whenever she jumps. Thing is, though, she just needs to get one dagger and be able to blink on him without actually getting stunned, and she can do a lot of damage to him, because he's not going to get level 6 unless he's doing stacks in the jungle. And then if he's doing stacks in the jungle, you can also kind of hurt that as well. So my first idea was going into Phantom Assassin. And if you're going Phantom Assassin, I think that she's not the best as a safe laner, because one, she's okay versus Bristleback in your lineup, but she's terrible versus Lina. Lina just craps on her. Like, okay, you just do all the magic damage right through, and you don't even care about my dodginess at all. So it's a good lineup for that, definitely. And there's a lot of different things that I was trying to do, like split pushing versus you, but you got that Kotl to answer it. You have your split push of your own with Lone Druid, and there's a lot of different points that you can go into your draft. The only things that there's a couple things that I saw that maybe could be problems. Actually, Templar Assassin was first on my list, and it's funny that was the first ban. Like, that is a great ban, because she's going to blow up everyone on your team. That if you stack the minus armor, your guys aren't going to be that tanky. And yes, your bear gets pretty tanky, but not versus a Templar Assassin generally. You can destroy that creature, especially if you go Slaughter. And that was one thing about your draft, I think maybe was one thing that you maybe wanted to ban was a Slaughter. Because if you put that minus armor on the bear, he gets very, very squishy very fast.
Yeah, that's true.
Also, Bristle's the same way, Ogre's the same way. It's like these kind of these heroes that and that's the thing is like you could save that ban for your second phase. So I would actually do Slaughter instead of Centaur because Centaur, yeah, he's a problem for the mid game, but Lone Druid matches pretty well because like yeah, you harass him, but you could harass him with Bear. So Bear has all that health, and then yeah, you take some damage back on Bear, but who cares? It's Bear. And if he starts getting low or you get a root off, which does a lot of damage to him, then you can start right-clicking him and kill him out. And you still can't stun him out. You can stun his bear out, but you can't stun him out. So that's the one thing I would change about your bans is like putting Slaughter there and maybe Venge. I like the same idea that you're going in with a minus armor deal, but I don't think that Venge is something that they would pick as like a late game carry, and that's kind of the only thing I would see by the end. Like as a support versus your team, I wouldn't like say Venge counters your team necessarily.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's weird. It's weird to have. I think a lot of. I think the general public is not on board with the Venge carry train that Owie tried to like push down our throats in 7.05. So I totally agree with you, and that's why like that was that one that one ban at the end. I was kind of like, it's gonna be game dependent, but if you're gonna force me to choose, I think Venge, if you picked her up earlier in the phase, and I would only run her as support, I think she's not bad in lane. So I think she's a decent support right now. She's not great in lane, but she's not bad. And I think the displacement of whenever there's a team that's going high ground against you, I think there's really, in my opinion, there's like two things you really want. You want wave clear to just sort of prevent it all happening in the first place. And the second thing is I think you want some sort of displacement. So whether that be like a mag RP with a skewer, whether that be a pudge, Venge swap, bat rider, something like that, that sort of like takes the fight from where it could be, from where the team that's sieging you, to in a position where they just have no idea where the fight's going to be, going to be taking place, or the skirmish is going to be taking place. So that's kind of where, and I think Pudge is like a little bit weak right now. And I thought Venge minus armor makes some of my heroes not as tanky. But yeah, I think fifth banning here is probably not realistically going to happen unless you're a core, but she's not good as a core.
Right. Honestly, Pudge is on my list as well. Pudge was the last one on my list. I have a few more, but that's exactly what I was going to get into, is that's kind of the weaker points of your draft. You don't have a lot to collapse on someone. So you kind of answered that for me. And the thing is that's not that weak of a thing in a draft, because a lot of times captains will overlook that point. A lot of times they're thinking team fight, they're thinking split push, they're thinking the basic ideas of draft, not, okay, we pull them out and then what happens. Mm-hmm. That's kind of an advanced technique that a lot of people don't generally see, or even a lot of times as a captain, I will forget, okay, we got to break down their team fight. I'm thinking like silencer or something, or pull that, or kind of break up what they're doing, and I'll think of like silencer or getting like a big ult myself with like tide or something. But you're right, Pudge is really good here. I also really like AA. Like, I know I'm on this train and I was talking about it earlier, but AA versus your draft is really, really strong, because you could be as tanky as you want with those guys, you're still going to shatter. And he's kind of one of those guys that if you do jump him, then he has the ability just to lay everything out and increase the magic damage on everyone. And that's one thing that you're missing, is that like Bristle and Lone Druid, all those guys are good, but if you can surprise Lone Druid and explode him with magic damage, explode Lina, and hopefully you can get Kotl, but really Lone Druid and Lina, then you got like Bristle as your damage dealer with like Ogre Kotl. You're not really going to have too much damage there. So my idea is like AA with like Zeus. Zeus AA would be tremendous for you. And like Zeus has some potential now. He used to be crap, but with the addition of what Aether Lens gives to him, giving that mana regen, that availability, and Force Staff, that heal on him with the new Ring of Health, he has everything he needs with Force Staff, Aether Lens now, and
Yeah.
it's pretty solid, man. I gotta say, it's pretty solid.
Yeah, that plus I think a lot of these mids that have good wave clear. I mean, like they added only one creep to the mid lane, but it's had enough emphasis that it's made some of these heroes like Invoker, who doesn't really have any wave clear in the mid lane, it makes it a little bit rough for them. I think even like PA, there are heroes who or teams that are still picking her because you go like Vlad's and you can still have some really good early to mid game presence on PA. But I do think like there something that really puts her at a disadvantage is you add that one creep into the lane and then you face up against somebody who has some wave clear like a Shadow Fiend or a Lina or a Puck, and they just push that wave into your face, and they've got every rune, they've got the potential to go take some jungle stacks if they want, they have the potential to do some roaming if they want. So yeah, I think Zeus, it just by virtue of adding that one creep into the lane, it actually gets like a slight bump in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. I love that potential. I didn't even think about that. I was thinking more of, I mean, there's just the magic damage potential that
He
you
could
can
throw
put
out damage
now.
from range. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Yeah, I actually considered Zeus as a possible ban. I wasn't afraid of him, and maybe it's just because I haven't seen that dude in like years. It's been a long time since that guy's been a hero in any Dota 2 game that I've played. So
100% understand. I was thinking myself, I was like, man, I don't know if this hero is going to be good or not, because they really didn't change anything about him. They gave him a little bit of that talent thing. That's kind of cool with the whole Aghs scepter. I don't know if you've seen that yet, but it increases.
Oh yeah, yeah, dude. I will let you know a secret. If you play up against like a mediocre Tinker player, that thing just counters them ridiculously hard.
Oh, yeah.
If you can predict where they're going to blink to, and you set it up in the tree line so that they can't attack it because it's out of range, but it still clips them, they will just eventually die to the damage that it deals. It's pretty hilarious. But yeah, I think is definitely one of those heroes that would present problems to my draft, because the other kind of side of this, if you kind of look at the heroes that I'm picking, and I should say that the basis of this draft comes from partially from a draft that was run by Team Liquid. I think it was yesterday in Dream League. They ran this lineup, but sub out the Lina for an Earthshaker. They fifth picked Crit Shaker mid for Miracle, who just literally got destroyed in lane by a PA. But they placed all their emphasis on Miracle, and the other lanes. I mean, Lone Druid on was played by Matama Man. He's a fantastic Lone Druid player, and of course he had his way in lane. And then the Kotl plus Bristleback top, that did really well. The other hero that they had was, instead of an Ogre, they had a Tusk, which I do think there's one thing about my lineup that kind of maybe is a little bit lacking, and that's like a Dazzle Shadow Grave or a Tusk Snowball, something to like save a hero that gets gone on, whether it be like a Legion Commander Duel or a Beastmaster Roar, something of that nature, like the Abaddon in the back line, you can throw out a shield. But I think I like the Lina a little bit more because it maybe gives me somewhat of an insurance policy to the late game, and also the Lina builds that we've been seeing with the bloodstone into some more right-click damage items, like particularly like potentially a dragon lance, or at least the plus range talent allows her to attack towers from out of range. So like between the buff to the bear and the fact that we're making the bear the emphasis of this draft, I gotta tell you, I think there's just a ton of building damage that can come out of this thing, and it's very realistic for a Kotl to get an early Aghs in 7.06 with the jungle change. Particularly if my offlane gets off to a very good start, a hot start, and we use the Bristleback to sort of take advantage of that lane, push out the lane, and then maybe do some side pulls. I think it's pretty realistic that like the Kotl can get an early Aghs by maybe stacking a few camps, etc. And once he has that Aghs online, it's just people up front smacking the tower, bears smacking the tower, Kotl's sending out his healing, and we just sort of high ground whenever it's daylight out. But the AA obviously throws a little bit of a wrench in that system, so I think that would be a good counter.
Yeah, and well, I'm looking at your draft. Actually, one of the other things that I love about your draft, you did mention that you can go out and do side pulls and things like that, is that it's risky for them to do stacks, and
Yeah,
that's great. With having the Kotl Bristle, like, okay, stack all you want, we're gonna just have Bristle tank it while I blast it down as Kotl, and good luck. You're not gonna get the last hits. So, like, that's one part about your draft I wanted to like let people know about, is that is fantastic. There's nothing that I can really draft against you to stop that, unless the guys that you already have banned, like Ursa and Templar, the ones that are just going to explode people for being a little bit out of position.
yeah, exactly. Yep. And that's sort of what what I was kind of thinking is anybody that can like take advantage early game about poor positioning. I wanted to get them banned. The other thing I would say about my draft, like a personal criticism of my own draft, I know that's there's nothing to be criticized about this draft, folks. It's the greatest draft ever made. But the thing that the liquid draft had that mine kind of doesn't is that the Earthshaker, he picked up a blink dagger at some point in the game. I mean, it was rough. It was actually like pretty par for the course for a liquid game. If you're like a liquid fan out there and you've been watching it, it's like the enemy team just focuses on Miracle and makes sure he has the worst laning phase of his life, which seems to be how every team plays them. So it's par for the course. Miracle was just like triple man ganked or like 3-man to mid, pretty much nonstop. But he eventually got a blink. And you'd have that Bristle on the front line. You'd have that Bear who got like a 20-minute radiance. There was a Hannah Midas up, even like a Blightstone to help for some tower damage and to really help buff up that damage to the tower. They had some counter initiation with the Earthshaker, which I really liked about their draft. And I think one argument you can make about my draft is I don't have a good like, okay, the team maybe they get that centaur in the first phase, and oh shit, like now they're on top of us and there's like a bunch of sort of small skirmishes breaking out around the tower. I don't have that like Magnus or that Warlock or that Earthshaker to just drop that ult and just sort of like counter initiate on top of their initiation. But
Right. And that's actually another hero that I was going to talk about, was actually Enigma. Like, you do have some ways to break up an Enigma at this point, but really Bear is not reliable, because if you place it right, you're not going to have a Bear ever be able to scream you. And there's like the best chance that you could have is a Lina, just because how far her cast range is in general and how far back she is. She's generally not going to be caught. But if you jump the Lina every time with the black hole, it's going to be really hard for it to stop. And you take out that damage dealer, it could be a problem. It could be a real problem. But
yeah, it's where my boy Ogre McGee's got to be standing in the back line with that fire blast ready. But yeah. I want to talk a little bit about Ogre in this draft and the reason why I picked him. So like I said, like the alternate to the Ogre was the Tusk for liquid, and Tusk is a phenomenal hero out there in terms of the ability to save people defensively from like duels and things of that nature with his snowball. But at my 3K pub level, no one is capable of those plays. So, but beyond that, I like Ogre in this meta, and I think like I look at this hero and I think he offers two phenomenal things to what you can take advantage of in 706, and that is he can bully out either a mid laner or a off laner really hard, and we know that, but now you don't have the shrine to fall back on. And as an off laner myself, like every time I see an Ogre drafted so far in 706, I know I'm just in for a miserable time, because I can't really trade effectively with him, and if I do, my punishment is that I have to burn through my regen, and I don't have that shrine until the 5-minute mark to really fall back on. So I think from that perspective, he's going to be really good in this meta, as just that person that can either go mid and bully the mid laner, or it can go into the off lane or the safe lane and bully the enemy off laner. And then the second thing that I think he adds, which you can really take advantage of, is his bloodlust, and his bloodlust ability to help you sort of like farm those stacks. So if you have anybody on your team that's taking farming stacks or farming jungle with how quickly those camps respawn, that bloodlust is just going to accelerate their farm and really propel you into the mid game. So I think like you could pair him with like a Sven, for example, and just like, man, Sven, I don't know what your experience between 7.0 and like 7.05, but like I never saw that hero, and every time I did, it was just like an easy plus 25, because without him being able to sort of trampoline off those early stacks or that early jungle farm, he just had no presence in the mid game outside of maybe like some of the phenomenal Sven players out there. But your average Sven player just couldn't really take advantage of that. Plus, there's been nerfs to Helm of the Dominator, you know. But I think like you could pair a Sven with an Ogre and really take advantage of the jungle. So that's why I like to add Ogre to this draft, because you bloodlust that bear and man, that tower just drops.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very he's a very strong pick right now. I do tend to agree. It's kind of it's kind of the all in early game though, where I think that pros can't generally do that because they'll know how to stop an ogre. Whereas, I mean, even it doesn't matter what MMR you're in pubs, it's a lot harder to take down an ogre because you have to be very well coordinated. You have to understand the opportunity of when you can go in, because a lot of times the ogres know how much they can take, and if they see multiple TPs coming in or people coming out of the fog, as long as they're not too gung-ho about it, they're gonna walk away pretty easily. So the situation is like, okay, yeah, we can see this ogre, we can hopefully push him away, but is it a guaranteed kill? And also, people in pubs, let's face it, they are very, very selfish, and they don't see killing the ogre twice as being worth taking away some farm for themselves. Because if you kill the ogre twice, then you can like get into his head and kind of go to a point of like not being this tanky space creator that he once was. And that's kind of something about that Liquid game. They had another the game right before it. They actually played Ogre, so. And I saw that potential in Kuroki. Kuroki, actually, he went in and he was attacking people, and he was like forcefully dying a lot of times, but he never got discouraged. He just kept creating space and kept creating space over and over and over, so that the early game, not the early game, that the mid game was basically guaranteed for the rest of his team. And now he was like not as a good ogre should be by mid game, but you don't have to be when everyone else is farmed up. So I do like that part about your draft. You're almost securing your mid game by giving yourself this ogre and giving yourself a really good early game by having that one hero that's gonna shine there. Do you think that now I'm not 100% sure on this. This was kind of one guy I was thinking about is Spirit Breaker. I kind of thought that as long as he doesn't move, Kotl is really not that big of a problem for him, because like Kotl he can blast him down, but he still has a ton of armor and a ton of health in the very beginning, and that kind of puts a wrench into your plans, because you can't, like, if you dive Lone Druid before he hits level 5, it can be pretty successful, and you can really punish him at that point.
Yeah, I definitely think, I mean, there's not a lot of Lone Druid players out there, so I think he's sort of like this hero that's like shrouded in mystery as to what his strengths are and things like that. And I'm not a great Lone Druid player, but I did play him when he was like Sniper 2.0 with a pet, and and like it was pretty incredible. But still, one of his strengths is his ability to dominate 1v1 matchups. And I do think now that I hadn't really thought about the Spirit Breaker, but I do think sort of as you raise the point now, if the enemy team had a Spirit Breaker and some form of an offlaner that could bring some damage, I do think it would be a problem. Some of the other bans I considered were like Weaver, somebody that could like go up against the Lone Druid but trade farm at the very least. And a few heroes like that, but ideally I think a lot of people are falling into these pitfalls so far with 7.06 with picking heroes that it's like, okay, so I'm going to pick Anti-Mage, for example. Anti-Mage can take advantage of this amazing jungle farm that exists now, but the problem is that he's not really going to come online until like maybe 25 minutes. Well, if that's like at the earliest. If the enemy team picks that sort of, or has that sort of a mindset against my lineup, they've already lost the game, in my opinion. I think like Slark, another hero that, he can do a lot of stuff, but he's going to suffer against a team that's going to be 5-manning and going after objectives, and he's going to suffer against a team that's going to come online really early, because he comes online a little bit later. Same thing with my my boy Invoker, I talked about how like the addition of the lane creep to the mid lane kind of hurts him a little bit. The other thing that kind of hurts him is that there's more of an emphasis on the early mid game, and Invoker's timing is more of a 16, 17, 18 level range, which is really towards the end of the mid game. And so like there's a lot of heroes out there that just they can take advantage of this jungle, but even if by taking advantage of the jungle, they're not necessarily coming online early. Whereas like a Sven takes advantage of the jungle and then he comes online really early. I thought about banning a Lycan, just somebody else that could maybe split push, like a Lycan or even a Nature's Prophet. But you know, I think like I think people are going to be surprised at how fast the lone Druid bear can take towers, and I think people are going to be surprised at how strong he can be played with the right mindset.
Mhm. I would tend to agree with you. It's one of those heroes that it's kind of like whenever I see a good Meepo, I know how to counter Meepo and I know how to play versus him. And there's a lot of times where it's like I think I have him, but then versus like the very very good Meepos, they'll just net me out to the perfect rhythm and be away and get away with like no health and come back and they kill everyone all the time. So like I hear what you're saying for sure. It's one of those high skill, high reward heroes, and that's kind of the biggest buff about your draft is that that's the one thing that it needed by having the lone druid. If you switch it to someone else, it would be kind of more predictable on what I could do and perceive on what's possible for you to go up against on my side of the draft. But with having like basically two heroes in one, being able to roar in both directions, kind of break things up, make it less monotonous, it's definitely something that it's hard to plan for in drafting. And you can have there's definite heroes that are counters to him, and just like any other hero in the game, but it's really hard to find that balance. Whereas other people, it's like, okay, I can generally figure out what they're gonna do within their draft or like within their style, and like bear procs on his route too add just a whole nother level of complexity. So
Yeah, yeah, and that root mechanic. Like I was thinking about PA, but I was kind of thinking like if that PA takes a fight in the mid game and gets rooted on somebody, she's pretty much fucked. And to the point that I was kind of making about maybe split push countering me or like lane creep cutting. I suppose that's a possibility, but I think like man, it is excellent to play with a Kotl. The ability to just recall people and have them like you pick up an early boots of travels on somebody, and it's just like, all right, if they're sort of threatening our base, we'll just send the Lina back, who has great wave clear, can fit an early boots of travels into her build because she could get a lot of farm, and we'll just send her back and then we'll recall her, or somebody else if can do sort of like a very similar thing. Um,
not
so
not only that, but it seems like if I'm not mistaken, Matumbaman went more the classic Radiance build on the bear and kind
yeah,
of buffing up the bear because of the new talent giving him 50% versus magic resist.
yeah,
So I kind of feel like that style of play also kind of lends itself to the split push because you have that radiance on the bear that you can just send to a lane if you need to as well. So a lot of play there versus the split push, a lot of play versus everything really, and like even almost team fight you still are okay. It's one thing you're a little bit lacking on, but it's not a huge hole, it's something
yeah.
that you could use other heroes for it to beef it up a little bit. But I really like this draft, man. It's really good.
Yeah, yeah. I think like in my mind, if I'm sort of reading it correctly, I think the three things that really can counter my draft are we take a fight at nighttime, which would be or we like try and push towers at nighttime, which we can control. So we don't have that Kotl Aghs. The second thing would be Silver Edge kind of counters my draft a little bit. I mean, anytime you draft a Bristleback, that's a concern. And then it sort of compounds onto my third point, which is I'm not confident in this draft late game. There are some like lone druid shenanigans you can pull off, but I think if we cross that 35, 40-minute threshold and we get into the late game, we haven't maybe taken at least 1 Rex, maybe 2, I would start to lose confidence in my draft a little bit. Maybe we could fall back on the fact that we have the Kotl, who gives great around the map mobility, to like an early Boots of Travels team, and also gives you great wave clear. And we've talked about sort of like the Radiance Bear can maybe go stop a lane, things like that. But yeah, I think late game my lineup has some problems.
Well, honestly, man, with the biggest thing about it going early, I didn't kind of want to like talk about this too much because it would be a little too revealing at some things. But anyway, I want to talk about it. Is that 40 minutes? At 40 minutes, you can have the double rune, and like it's not a big deal for a lot of times if you get like illusion rune, and sometimes arcane rune can be kind of bad on certain heroes, but getting a double damage, like if you can have map control and they're back in their base now, and you can get like double damage on one hero and haste on the other, that is almost like a guaranteed 1-team fight. It is insane how much potential that has on what you can do to high ground at that point.
Yeah, I can only imagine a double damage Lina. I think that was like the biggest shock to me about it started at DAC in terms of on the pro scene of what we were seeing, and a lot of times what we see on the pro scene sort of bleeds into the meta of the pubs. But like the power of Lina starting at DAC, really like into DAC, she was like almost an unpicked mid, and people have been joking about how like raindrops just like nerfed her into the ground, one item, but really they kind of reworked her talent tree. It was just total shit in the beginning. I don't know who thought up like putting like reduced cooldown on Dragon Slave plus the stacks on the same level, and just I don't know. But there were really like there was the prospect of being able to really build a physical damage Lina builds in like 7.0 and 7.01 and like the early patches of 7.0, and then they reworked her talent tree a little bit, and it just sort of like opened up this doorway into physical damage Lina of like a dream of the past of what some people would build, where people would go like Desolator on her and like crazy shit like that. But man, and then it was at Kiev, and she just melts towers with almost no cost. I mean, we talk about illusion gaming, the concept that you can send these illusions forward really with no risk to your team. A lot of these heroes that can actually attack tower outside of range and attack buildings outside of from a significant range, every time you push that hero back 100 units and with the ability to take the buildings or the objectives, it's just like that much less that you have to risk. So yeah, double damage Lina, plus bloodlust, man, those towers would melt.
Yeah, that'd be a hurting on those towers for sure. I do like this draft, and I like a lot of the different points that we've kind of talked about so far. But what are your item builds on these guys? What is going to be the thing that kind of ties it all together? And I know items can generally are dependent on the other heroes, but like perfect scenario, trying to get everyone together on an idea here. What do you feel?
Yeah, so I'll take a little bit more from Team Liquid. I'll talk maybe a little bit about what they opted for, and I think what I would repeat. So the bear Matama Man decided to go like your standard brown boots. He opened up with like the what's it called? The component of Desolator, the
Blightstone.
Like Blightstone. Yes, thank you. He opened up with the Blightstone, but then he built into like a Vlad's on the bear, I believe, and then a Midas and a Radiance. So I like that thought process. Like you get that Vlad's, it's early armor for your team, a good aura with the health regen, mana regen, and the armor. They actually had the Bristle go mech, which I was kind of surprised about. I think they had done that before in maybe some of the other Dream League matches, but I was kind of surprised to see that as well, because sometimes we check the boxes when we're drafting down a team and we think about, okay, who can build what, and I really want that Kotl to focus on getting his Aghs as soon as possible. So although like the Ogre is going to be playing the 4 and doing a lot of like the responsibilities of the 4, whether it be harassing lanes or rotating throughout the lanes, I want him to more focus on like the ward game and some more of the support items, and I want to get that Kotl Aghs up as fast as possible. Allow me to do more recalls around the map, allow me to do healing every time we're pushing towers. So that is a critical item for this draft, and then maybe that leaves the Bristle to either buy another mech or just like some sort of an aura item. I think if like the team's magic damage heavy, that being the enemy team, maybe look for an early pipe on him. If it's more physical damage or high instances of damage, he could go into that Crimson Guard. Or he could buy like the god tier item, Solar Crest, which is still, they nerfed it and it's still like a fantastic item, but you throw that up on the bear or you keep it on him and hit the tower, and what do you like, how do you respond to that? But so I think those in terms of items are pretty critical. The Lina to me, the thing I like about Lina, why I ultimately picked her, is like the ability to attack towers from range. She really comes online in the mid game. She's got the magic damage burst if we need. So if there's a P on the other team until that person gets BKB, not really going to be a problem. She can kind of do a lot of different things with her item builds if she wanted to. I don't think I think bloodstone is probably what she would go, so she can keep spamming out. I know a lot of Linas like opt for the Shadow Blade, but I feel like that's more of like a different type of play style. I think they could go for the Shadow Blade. I don't think it's necessarily bad in my lineup, but she's going to be the heavy damage dealer when it comes to team fights. So like her positioning is going to be pretty critical. So between her and the Ogre, they got to figure out some way to ensure that she's got either defensive items for her or mobility items for her that she can stay alive. So maybe that's where the Shadow Blade comes into play. And the Ogre, I'm not going to lie, he's going to be the poor boy of this team. He's going to be the dude who's buying all the sport items. Hopefully has mana boots. I don't know. Obviously buys an Orb of Venom in the beginning, but he'll be the unsung hero of the team.
Yep. He's that classic. He's really 5 in this game, and he's the classic.
He's a bloodless bot.
Yep, exactly. The bloodless bot, the one that puts down the wards, and if they have a Ricky or Bounty Hunter or something, you're gonna have sentries coming out. And probably just
maybe that's and you bring up a good point with the Ricky. I didn't really ban, if you notice, I didn't really ban any of the roaming heroes that were really prevalent in 705 and the kind of 70 to 705, but like the trees. I'm not really worried about tree because I think one of tree's strengths is the ability that if there's the enemy team is like a slow sieging team, tree can be a problem for those teams because you got to just take those towers or he'll just heal them up. But my team's going to do a lot of damage, with Rabbit and the Lina smacking the tower. I'm not really worried about that. But I do think like the tree offers the ability to bolster the lanes, which could be a bit of a challenge. I think Ricky, or I'm not as worried about Bounty Hunter, but maybe Ricky as well. The ability to sort of hassle the lane. Maybe he can tilt the mid lane in the favor, or he can tilt the my safe lane or their off lane into the favor by sort of getting up on top of the lone Druid, harassing him out. I don't think Ricky would want to have anything to do with the Bristleback lane because he would just take so much damage from cool sprays over time, etc. It'd be kind of a mess, but
yeah. But it is something for late game that you can use to silence him. So
yeah, the cloud, yeah,
that is useful, and it's something that I was gonna put on the list to like kind of talk about. But at the same time, like it depends on how you would run, and you could kind of put the Kotl's gonna be in the Bristleback lane at first, and like he can do stacks and stuff, but he's basically gonna be sitting around Bristle anyway. And Bristle just needs to buy dust, and then he pretty much kills Ricky every time. So
yeah.
Like, it's one of those things that I was, like, thinking to put on the list, but when you have Ogre and Bristle, and they just, like, carry a dust around on both of them, then he's, like, kind of non-existent on this team. Like, yeah, he'll definitely give Lina some trouble. I don't think that's enough, though, to justify as a counter pick for you. So.
Yeah. And really, the only other hero I was kind of thinking of was maybe like Legion Commander. I play coming from the offlane position. I kind of said I've been like spamming a lot of Magnus lately. I think he's a hero we'll see kind of how he plays out, because even though he got some nerfs, he's still like what he does at his core is still, it wasn't really touched. They gave him a movement speed nerf. They nerfed like his empower ability. But ultimately, like he's still going to add the same thing that he's added since the beginning of time, which is the RP, the ability to displace teammates or the enemy team, etc. The problem with Magnus is he kind of comes on lane a little bit too late. It's like you really need that blink dagger up. So like depending on how his lane goes, like the 15 to 20 minute mark, maybe he comes online and he starts being super effective. But like up until that point, he's not really going to do anything. I thought about Legion Commander because it's kind of another hero that I think like really thrived off of 7.0, the ability to have shrines, the focus on the early game, and I think 7.06 really pushes that or places the emphasis on that even more. Not that the shrines are nerfed a little bit, so I think Legion Commander can be like a really good hero in the early to mid game. It can maybe isolate some of my heroes if they get an early blink dagger, but I just don't know what lane that would potentially happen in. Maybe against the lone druid. I'm not really sure how that matchup works out, but she has the ability to remove the entangle, which is really nice.
Yeah, but it's still solid damage that's going on top of her that she can't harass out of. And like the call is nowhere near as useful with it being so expensive now as time goes on. So
yeah,
it's I honestly think that she's not back to a bad tier, but she's not.
Well, I mean, she was. Let's be honest. She was like God mode. Yeah. She was so fucking incredible. You could run her mid, or you could run her off lane, and oh god, she had the ability to fall back on jungle stacks. She kind of got a little bit of a slight buff, as most strength heroes with like low mana pools kind of got, because they buffed mana and they buffed starting health a little bit. But yeah, I mean, the ability to fall back on jungle stacks for her in the off lane, and the ability to use like overwhelming odds and just like take the enemy safe laner, knock 35% of his health off, and the movements. Oh my god, it was glorious playing that hero.
Yeah.
So I think they just took her from like God mode down to like average or maybe slightly above average.
Right. It's also it's a big difference when 7.05 was like the patch for offlaners, and now you go into 7.06 and it's not.
I don't want to play offlane anymore. Yeah. It's so brutal, man. Like, I've had the very first game I played. I was playing Magnus, and I was like, I got this. This is standard. Poor man's shield tango opening, and then I was like, oh god, I forgot the shrines. 5 minutes. Oh,
yeah.
And I hoped that my 4 tangos could get me from the 0 minute mark to the 5 minute mark, and they did not. I think I had to like ferry out like another set of tangos or a salve or something. It was rough. It sucks playing offlane now, I gotta tell you.
Yeah, it's
plus the deny mechanic. I know you're getting a little bit more experience, but like if you play a offlaner who wants to farm, it is brutal, because the enemy safe laner is going to be trying to deny out your creep. So where you can sort of be like, okay, you get your last hit, I'll get my last hit. The supports are in there. They're like, I'm gonna fuck this dude's day up. I'm gonna deny that creep.
Yep.
And God, it's brutal.
Yep. I used to play Clockwork all the time too because of the Bulba block, and
yeah,
that's like how I was like starting to kind of find my place again in matchmaking. In the last patch, I was like, at the last like couple weeks, whenever the patch hits, like the very last week, I'll be fine. Before the patch changes, but like the couple weeks before the patch changes, I'm always very lost and I don't know what to do. I finally figured it out. I just got to like spam clock and be in the off lane, and now I just like I can't even touch him anymore, man. It's brutal,
dude. I mean, like the one thing that they gave to offlaners was the creeps start a little bit closer to your tower, but at the same time, they gave jungle camps back to the supports. So, like, not only the supports pulling the lane and potentially denying you out experience and giving more farm to the safe laner, they're also getting more. They're getting more experience. Like, in my opinion, gone are the days where you have like 5 and 4 positions who are like not 6 by 12 minutes because they've just had a really unfortunate time and haven't been able to like pull anything because you maybe ward blocked something. I guess now maybe I kind of like it because some of the mechanics that we used to do a lot of, like being really good at stacking camps as we're running through the jungle to rotate to a different lane, pulling the camp so that we can get our experience as supports, and now like ward blocking is probably going to be a much bigger deal in this patch than it has been in previous patches. Whereas like they brought back the runes and they were from 7.0 to like 7.05. Getting that mid lane, if he was particularly if it was an emphasis on bottle mid, if your mid laner was going to go bottle, you really needed that mid rune or that mid ward to be on rune. But now you really need a rune or a ward for offlane. Like,
Oh,
I
most
just don't want to
definitely.
play offlane again.
The thing is like before, a lot of times I would ignore the creep camp. I was like, all right, yeah, heck, pull it because it's not going to be big enough where it's going to matter. And then I would put a ward down to be able to see when they were doing it, so then I would contest it because then I could contest it because I didn't have to be like a massive tank to contest it. And yeah, it's a completely different ballpark now, man. As the offlaner, I feel sorry for all the offlaner players out there because I started to dabble in it, and now I'm like, nope, I'm gonna go back to support.
just don't. Sometimes I get into a game. I'm like, do I just go Iron Talon? And then the support will give me a ward. People are starting to give wards to offlaners, and I like that. But then I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna use this ward on my own high ground, on like near my tier 1 tower, and I'm just gonna buy Iron Talon, and I'm just gonna farm jungle. Probably not the play, but man, it is a miserable time trying to lane at this stage.
It is.
It's awful.
It is. You have to do a lot of work on offlane now. It's kind of enjoyable actually for me, and I'm still considering going back into the offlane just because like I'm a glutton for punishment, and I like to do the stuff that's no one else wants to do and make it like fun somehow. But anyway, we're talking for too long here. We should probably rate our beers and rate our alcohol here. So, how do you feel about this? I mean, obviously it's a not childhood favorite, but it's a
it's a childhood favorite. Here for it. Like, no, yeah, it's close to the heart. When I saw it at Costco, I was like, I gotta buy this. Like, Highwest whiskey. I'm telling you, if you live in Utah and like if you're into like the skiing life, especially, and you go to Park City or go to Park City for Sundance, like you will find yourself in the Highwest distillery at some point over the winter break. But I would rate it 5 out of 5 stars. It's phenomenal.
Dang. All right. So
it's good.
First time we get whiskey, and the first time someone drinks whiskey on the show, and they're rating it a 5 out of 5. So apparently we should be switching over to whiskey. It should be the whiskey draft.
I mean, if you guys want to get some hair on your balls, just hit that whiskey, dude.
Of course. I don't know. I think I'm gonna stick with beer for a little bit. I'm still exploring the wonders of beer at this point because I don't know. I'm a beer drinker, but I don't like ever really go out. I like get what I always get all the time. So like it's been fun trying everything out. But Guinness, it's good to go back to try out Guinness again. It's a basic beer, Guinness Draught. It's good, but it's nothing to like write home about. So I'm gonna give it a 3.5 out of 5 thunderclaps. Because
yes, thunderclaps. Yeah, no, that's fair. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I bet if you were in Europe, you would rate that higher, or if you were in Ireland, you'd rate that higher for sure.
I bet I would. That sounds delicious, and I'll definitely have to do it someday. We'll have to get some money together, AG, and we'll tour Europe together.
Dude, next time the major's in Europe, it's a possibility next year.
It's true.
We'll have to see.
Awesome.
I think the real question is my draft like the greatest draft you've ever seen? That's what it comes down to, or at least better than any of Kimber's drafts. I will take that. I will go home a happy man if that honor was given to me.
Well, I don't want to say that because he's getting married today. So
I know we should be kind to him.
We should be kind. We should be kind to Kimbrel at this point. He as his wedding gift. I don't know if I can do that to him.
That's fair. I'll take that. I'll accept that.
But we know who won out on this draft today, and sadly we have to close out the show at this point because it is running a little long, or as our old friend might say, it's running a little long in the tooth, the grand wazoo.
Yeah. So
we have to close out today. To help us out, you can subscribe or like any of our videos. You can go to twitch.tv/Toffees_Dota2. You can go to our YouTube channel, and it is at 5 Gaming, or just 5 Gaming, all one word. You can also go to our podcast, any of our podcasts, instead of watching the VODs. You can listen to them on Stitcher, iTunes, or SoundCloud. If you want to, you can give. If you're feeling extra generous, you can give to our Patreon at www.patreon.com/Toffees. If you have any questions for me, Toffees, or our new lovely guest, AG47. You can follow us all at, well, Toffees. You can follow Toffees at Toffees TV. You can follow me at my Twitter at Flubb Dota, and you can follow AG at AG47 _Dota too, right? Or is it just Dota?
No, you got it right, dude. That was perfect.
All right. It's at AG47 _Dota. Okay, cool. All right. And then if you have any questions for, well, do you have anything else to plug? I don't know if you're working on anything right now. Want to give you the mic just in case.
I'm not. Just excited for the international.
Yep.
That's all. It's really a lot to say.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I am too. I can't wait. But if you want, okay. If you want, you can always send me an email, crazyflubb@gmail.com. If you have any casting needs or anything that you require me to do, anything that you want to talk about or anything, so you can send me an email there. Well, it was fun sharing a brew with you today, and hope to see you guys on Sunday for the Flubb update. And if not, we'll catch you next week on a new Brewmaster's Draft. Catch you later.